Welcome back to the Whatnots Reactor Core number 73. This will be our reactions for Miss Marvel number 4. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you on this Wednesday?
I am buzzing with excitement right now, Melissa. I came up with a theory for where the MCU is going based on
exciting.
Just a small detail in this thing, but it was the last piece of the puzzle I needed, and it unlocked my mind, and I exploded, and I'm so excited. So it could be wildly wrong, but I'm excited. I'll talk about it at the end of this podcast. But Miss Marvel episode 4 was great. I liked it a lot. Yeah. I'm having such a blast with this show. And I think it's shaping up to be one of the best, but it's not without its flaws. But what did you think? What are your thoughts on episode 4 here?
I enjoyed this a lot. I liked getting to meet Kamala's extended family, getting to spend so much time in Karachi. This felt like a little vacation I got to take. We went to a market. We went to a boathouse. We went to Nani's big, beautiful home. We got to see a dog.
The rich? Who knew that they're stinking rich over there? Goodness. Yeah, we did get to see a dog too. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one was good. I feel a lot of vindication from this one too, especially after what we were talking about on our reaction to the third one. Just our idea of how different dimensions work versus different universes. They seem to kind of confirm that with this one. So I was just like, yes, I was right. I'm so excited. And then on top of that, one of the things I was hoping for was to see Miss Marvel be a little more offensive with her powers, be a little more aggressive. And we got a little bit more of that. Still not exactly where I would hope, but it was the step in the right direction that I really needed. And so it was good. It was just like, yes, this is what I want. This is awesome.
I think the show it's excelling at giving you. There's a lot of good action in this episode. Really excelling at giving you that peek into another world that you and I don't know, that the audience might not know, or if the audience does know, they'd like to see it up there. Let us visit this family in Pakistan. It felt very homey, and I really enjoyed that the show took time to like slow down a little, just give you a montage of them shopping in the marketplace. Give you a scene that's just Muneeba and her mother, like without Kamala in it at all.
Yeah, exactly. The flaw that I mentioned, though, is the first thing that I kind of want to go into a little bit of detail in here. I think the worst thing about this show so far is the villains. They're falling really flat. I don't know. Like, I think it spent the first act, the first two of the show here, building up damage control, right? And we were like, oh, interesting. We didn't really know. I mean, we kind of knew they would be around in some of these shows, but it's interesting to see them kind of be this antagonistic force for Miss Marvel here. It was not what we expected, but I liked it. It was interesting. And then they kind of drop it as soon as the djinns come in. And I'm okay with that. But they're also not spending the time on the djinns to really flesh them out like a villain proper. Because, it's like they show up and they're like, hey, we're family. And then it's smash cut to the next scene. They want to kill everyone. Oh, my God, even you. It just doesn't really feel like I know their true motivations or I know literally what they want to do and why, but I don't know why. Like, what is like, how does Najma feel about this exactly? How deep is her emotional connection to all of this? Like, it just seems very flat. and I don't know. Their powers are kind of hard to tell what they are. They have, if they're actually Jinn. I mean, do they have the like more Western style of they can make whatever they wish come true? That might explain how they got those weapons and how they got to Karachi so fast after they broke out of the prison. But also, like they got stabbed really easily with these knives and appear to die, and they get beat up, but they also have super strength. But like, I don't. It's real unclear what they are, or what they want, or what they're thinking of, like why they want this stuff. But is that how you're kind of feeling with them, or are you good with what we have so far?
I like them as a premise. I like that initial exposition scene we get where she goes over to their house. But since then, we haven't gotten the supporting Jinn really filled out. I don't think I know their names or how one of them's very different from another one. You're right. It is sort of vague exactly what they can do and what they can't do. But I think there's possibility there. I feel like I like what's there. We just need more of it. We just needed to be like fleshed out and explained a little better.
Exactly.
The plot of Kamran's mother leaving him in a prison has a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that they dropped the DODC, but it has been one episode where we are in another part of the world. We're in Pakistan for one episode. I don't know if I'd call it the fact that they dropped the DODC.
They weren't really in episode 3. They did show up, but like they weren't as much of a presence as they were in the first 2. If that makes sense.
Things shift, things change around. We haven't seen Zoe in a while, but I imagine by the end of the series, we will get back to Zoe.
Yeah, but that, like, I don't have a need to see more of Zoe per se. Like, they did her in the first one. She's in that inciting event at Avenger Con. But besides that, they don't really do much with her. And so I'm not like, we need to get back to Zoe. Right. Whereas they spent more time with the DODC, I feel like, or at least built them up to be more important, if that makes sense. But yeah, I agree with you. I like their inclusion. I thought that was a brilliant move to be like, they're Jinn, they're G's, right? That stuff is all neat. But yeah, I just wish we got more of them. I wish they were fleshed out. Which is also an interesting thing, because to do that, they would have to take more time to sit with those characters and their motivations and emotions and all that stuff. However, I also feel like the pacing of this show is great.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's given me enough of each thing that I'm interested in and I want to know more, but it's moved on enough where I don't feel like we're stuck in a single thing, right? Where we're just like, too much of the DODC, right? I just want to go do something else. Like, we're always on to the next thing, and I feel like that's worked out for the show. So it like, I'm not sure what the solution there is to be like, how can we then have more of the Jinn without really slowing it down, if that makes sense. So I don't know. But what did you think of the Red Daggers?
They were interesting. I knew that I haven't watched the like individual teasers we'll get week to week teasing the next episode. I'll watch like the couple main trailers leading up to a show, but I don't need the between week trailers.
Sure.
So I knew there was some concept, some identity called Red Dagger coming up. I don't think I knew it was like a society of these street warriors. I like them, but I'm worried they might turn out kind of like the Jinn, where it's like, this is a really interesting concept, but you're not able to give it the time it really deserves. But maybe they're going to continue to live out there in the universe, and maybe we'll run into a Red Dagger again. Maybe, Sharon Carter knows a Red Dagger.
Who knows? Yeah.
Maybe we'll have a Red Dagger versus a Scarlet Scarab.
Who knows?
Just a big
Black
red
Widow,
time.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Um, so for me, what's interesting with the concept of the red daggers in this, well, one, I'm not sure if it's if it's a single person in the comics or if it's like this where it's an organization. But for me, they really remind me of the Assassin's Creed video games. So I like in my own mind, I have this whole like backstory of like who they are and what they are and their creed and what they stand for. But that's just my own like preconceived notions because of what they remind me of. But yeah, I liked them so far. Again, they don't seem very fleshed out because we've only seen 2 of them, really. Like, if this is a whole organization, like, how expansive is that organization? Or is it just like a small family thing where there's like 4 of them, right?
Right. Are there stations all over the world? Will you go to Red Dagger, Australia?
Who knows? But yeah, like I liked this kind of concept that there is at least some kind of group out there that is potentially keeping track of the jinn. It is what it read like to me, that they are kind of keeping them in check. Not necessarily in like an antagonistic role per se, but like, hey, bad things can potentially happen if you come into like the regular human world. So we're just going to make sure things are okay. Right. And if they need to defend themselves, then they know how to do that. But yeah, that was the fascinating thing is he had this map that he like turned a dial on, and these new outlines of like potentially where other dimensions are or where the jinn world is. It's not clear exactly. But that was neat. I was like, whoa, what is this? I'm fascinated.
I got to talk about the physical map itself. So there's like a map of the world on the wall, a map of the world like you or I would have. And then placed over it is this like panel of lucite. And he turns the dial and like a map lights up on it, almost like it's carved in there. And then you hit the button and then it lights up, like my dad engraves little signs like these. I really like that. That felt very down to earth, very practical, like something these people would have.
Very old world, kind of ancient. Like you're using a compass, the protractor thing to map out all the stuff. Yeah.
It felt like a map my dad would make. And then they turn around and then there's that like display of a realm incursion. I'm like, I can't tell what that's made out of. That one looks magic. The other thing looked very practical. I don't understand this jump in aesthetics, this jump in materials.
Right.
I wanted everything to look like something that like my dad could make.
Yeah, they had some kind of like holographic technology, which is not unfamiliar in the MCU.
Right.
Like we've seen stuff like that. But it also has this like sandy effect where it's all these particles that come together to form the thing, but it still looks translucent. And I don't know. It's an interesting.
It looked cool, but I feel like if you were going to that, change the map they had before, or make the second thing look like the first map. I just didn't like that these 2 pieces of like the visual explanation looked very different. Like they came from 2 completely different secret headquarters in the MCU.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing for sure. But let's see, where do we want to go next? So yeah, shortly after that is when Najma catches up with Kamala and attacks her, and she strikes the bangle that's on her arm there, and it looks like there's a burst of power or something happens, and it seems to send Kamala back in time to the partition, to the place where her great grandma got separated from the family, all of that stuff. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Kamala is that string of stars that
Yeah.
got her grandma back to the family. And maybe that's why there's the family doesn't believe them, because there's maybe some time travel involved, but it's also not clear yet exactly if that was time travel. Is she like reliving a memory? Do people even notice her in there? Because she hasn't interacted with people yet, so we don't know. And I thinking back to that when we thought Najma was her great grandma, and that like it was just like, what? There's a familial thing going on here, and then we were just completely wrong. The next one, we don't know what that is yet. But how are you feeling about this potential time travel back to the partition?
I look forward to seeing it. They've repeatedly said this path of stars, and nobody's offered more specific details or any variation of that phrasing. It's kind of tricky to picture. Like, that could be so many different things in your head. And I look forward to finally getting an actual visual for this thing that happened. I do enjoy stories of you were part of the story all along, the sort of Prisoner of Azkaban loop, where you were always the cause that was supposed to have that effect. Yeah, I admire this show's approach to history. There's when her cousins are showing her around Karachi, they point out several things about the partition, which they mention it so many times. I'm like, surely Pakistan has other history, other historical events you could mention. They go to the same one repeatedly. They're really hammering it in to make sure you're aware. But I like that we're not just talking about this. Like, we get to see her go back there. It's a very harrowing time to be in.
For sure.
And something I was thinking about this episode is Muneeba grew up feeling embarrassed about her mom. Other people in the family and in the community felt embarrassed by what she would say about this path of stars, about her belief in magic. And I thought about how has that perspective changed in this MCU that has grown more and more magical? Like, Muneeba lives in the same, she knows everything, almost everything we've seen. She knows she lives in a world where there's like aliens and a guy snapped his fingers, then half of everybody disappeared. There's sorcerers. Like, the general public doesn't know everything, but they know enough that I'm still perplexed that characters will look at other characters and be like, how silly. You're believing in a fantasy that could never happen, when they've seen so many seemingly impossible things happen.
That is a good point. I never really thought of that until now. That how like what exactly is it that she doesn't believe about the story? Because the details are fuzzy.
Yeah, and I can see that she didn't grow up believing it, but like post-snap, I feel like your headspace would change so much that maybe there's a lot of eccentric old family tales that you would take a second look at and say, maybe there is something to that.
Yeah, or like who of the Khan family got snapped, and like, is this like, wouldn't this be a perfect time for her to then like go and reconnect with her mom in this like, wow, we just learned that like aliens exist and like half of all life just got destroyed, and like that. I feel like that would be a big time for people to kind of reconnect with family members there, and then for them specifically be like, hey, so remember that time when I was younger and you said that story? Like, what? Can you retell? Now that we know that all of this exists, what was happening there? Right? That makes sense. That makes sense. But yeah, I'm excited to see where this show goes. We have 2 more left, which again, I think we still have plenty of room to do all sorts of things with this show. I'm not sure exactly if this will end in a big confrontation against Najma or the Department of Damage Control, or both, or what exactly. I'm not sure. But I'm excited to find out for sure.
So tell me your big unifying theory of the MCU. I'm excited to hear what this could be.
Buckle up, Melissa. Buckle up.
Click.
Okay, so yeah, so this one they kind of confirmed what we talked about last time, where that hey, these alternate dimensions are kind of layers that make up a universe, right? Another dimension is another way to see the world. Maybe it's a plane of existence that we can't necessarily see or understand or stuff like that. The MCU is no stranger to the words dimension or realm, but what's interesting is that they seem to use those two words interchangeably in this one here. So when they said, hey, we're the Jinn, right, and we come from the Nord dimension, that's where we started to be like, okay, so dimensions, what's the difference between that and a universe? Here they also say the Nor realm. They call it a realm. And they explain that, hey, there are realms out there, right? So we've seen like the quantum realm, we've heard of the dark dimension. It just seems like we have maybe more than these than we think, right? We could potentially include the Duat and the ancestral plane, especially since those were described as being like the afterlives were described as being part of the same network, so to speak. We also have Tallow, right, from Shang-Chi, which seems to be this kind of alternate dimension. And then technically we have the 9 realms from Thor, but those are more like physical locations in space, so maybe not exactly the same. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that those are a similar thing, right? We have more realms than we think. So right now, everything in the MCU has been leading people to believe that the next big event for the MCU is a comics event called Secret Wars. And I don't think the people are necessarily wrong. I think there is going to be some kind of gigantic event that is a big war that is happening, but I don't think it's going to be Secret Wars. There's a more recent Marvel event book called War of the Realms. And with them using this word realm interchangeably with dimensions, I'm thinking maybe it's actually that. So here's why. So the original Secret Wars was basically no more than the comic book version of let's take random action figures and smash them together and fight, right? That was basically it. There was a sequel to that I don't know as much about. Then there's a more recent version, I think from like 2015-ish, that is more about a single villain that creates a conglomerate world of all these different universes, but keeps them all separate. And then as that starts to crumble, they start to all fight back and stuff like that. And the buzzword in that event was incursions. There was a bunch of incursions that led up to that more recent Secret Wars. And we've now gotten the word incursions in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Also, the original Secret Wars comic book is where Spider-Man first got the symbiote, where he first got his black costume. We also know that there's a rogue symbiote running around in the MCU now. We don't know what is up with that, but there's a little symbiote there. But War of the Realms was the culmination of Jason Aaron's run on Thor, God of Thunder.
Okay.
He started his run on Thor with the Gore the God Butcher arc, which is the same story that they are doing in Thor Love and Thunder, which as of right now releases in like a week-ish, right? Which is kind of interesting to think about. Marvel has a history in the MCU of taking the names of famous like comic book events and doing their own version of them. So it's not exact,
Civil
right?
War.
Yes, Civil War in the comics was started by an explosion that killed a bunch of kids, and there the United States government said, "Hey, we're enacting a law where all superhumans have to register." Whereas in the MCU, it was a result of Ultron destroying Sokovia, and then the UN made the Sokovia Accords and tried to get the Avengers specifically to sign it. So it's a lot different there, right? But it had some similarities enough that they could be like, it's Civil War. So yeah, they could take War of the Realms and make it a little bit different, right? Whereas in the comics, War of the Realms focused on the 9 realms of Norse mythology: Midgard, Asgard, Niflheim, all that stuff. Might not do that in the MCU, but like I said, we're getting all these different realms. There's more of them that we know of. What if instead of the 9 realms, it's all of these realms that are fighting against one another? In a similar way, they all had this war on Earth. All of these different realms being on the Earth at the same time would kind of be like that conglomerate world, that battle world of the more recent Secret Wars. The last thing that I will say to keep in mind is that recently Kevin Feige spoke up and said, hey, the next big saga will be made clear this summer. Like, and he said that like a week ago, right?
Last time you gotta wonder. You gotta wonder if that means we are revealing it. You will be told this in like Thor: Love and Thunder. Heck,
that's what I'm thinking.
She-Hulk, so, that counts as summer. But also, there's San Diego Comic-Con.
There's that.
I don't know if it's going to be like revealed in a movie or if he's going to come out on stage in a new hat and tell us.
Announce it, right? But so the last time that he spoke up and said something similar was when he said, "Hey, if we ever do Daredevil, it's gonna be Charlie Cox if we decide to use him." A week later, Spider-Man No Way Home comes out, and who's in the movie? Charlie Cox. So it's like, home. Why is he speaking up about this now? Is it because Thor: Love and Thunder, which is doing the God Butcher arc, is going to then reveal that the next big saga is going to be War of the Realms somehow? So that that's my theory.
Yeah, I get it.
It's not necessarily that they're abandoning all Secret Wars. I think there can still be aspects of that, right? Like it can be a mix of those two things. But just all the pieces are starting to fall into place for me, at least, to think, what if it's War of the Realms instead?
That's exciting. They've got
who knows?
Several things going, several irons in the fire.
They do. Lots of buzzwords.
Could be the Secret Realm. It could Secret Invasion. Center for Secret Invasion. We've got Kang out there. We've got just had another Kree's out there. Yeah. Dark Avengers. Like there's a lot of different options for things that we know like will be threats, but it's hard to see from where we are, okay, what's the threat? And I think I do remember them saying, we're not going to do anything Thanos level again. Like that was the point of the Infinity Saga. And I think we're out of that, where there are going to be several more. There's going to be more threats that are a bit more on an equal playing field. It's not all going to come down to one big purple guy with a magic glove. But you do wonder if one of them is going to outstand the other ones a little bit more. One of them stands a little bit taller. One of them is the blockbuster event.
Exactly. So here's one more thing. The cherry on top of the pie. The most recent Secret Wars was kind of orchestrated by Dr. Doom. Today there was today or yesterday there was apparently a big rumor going on that there's like a Dr. Doom thing in the works that was leaked on Howard Stern, We don't know if it's real or
Oh.
not. We don't know if it's a joke. But it was like Howard Stern seemed to leak the existence of some kind of Doctor Doom project in the MCU here. Dude, he's a huge radio personality.
Well, I know
can
that, but like I've never heard him and
Maybe
Marvel
he-
in the same sentence before.
Maybe he interviewed someone. Maybe he is friends with Kevin Feige and they were chatting it up and then he let something slip. Who knows? But it's just one more thing to think about on top of that. So
Love a Doom. Very much looking forward to a Doom.
Indeed. But yeah, do you have final thoughts about Miss Marvel episode 4 here?
A nice time. I like that we got to get action. You know, they get some cool action scenes. I like when she's fighting the Red Dagger and she's really working with that hard light. You can really see her excelling with her powers. I like that we also got the cool like Summer of 4'2" hang out with the cool kids on the beach while a boy plays a guitar.
Yep. Good stuff.
Kamala's out there living.
She is. She's having a blast, flying all over the world, fighting people. And all the boys are after her, right? Like she's living it up. Living it up, indeed. Well, I think that about wraps us up for our reaction to episode 4 of Miss Marvel. Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. And listen to my other podcasts, Saturday Morning Obscurities.
And you guys can find me at Yo Kyla Springer on Twitter. And if you guys would like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at The Whatnots, of course, we are at The Whatnots on Twitter. So please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. Tell a friend, tell a foe, no matter what dimension they might be in. That would help us out a ton. This has been number 73 of The Whatnots Reactor Core. And we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.